This is the third part, talking about phases of sleep. As I told you, we have these hypnograms that are giving us ideas about, okay, now this subject is in the deep non-REM sleep, and now the subject is in the kind of REM stage, or different levels of sleep, and how these classifications between different, let's say, states of sleep could be happening. What are the pieces of information that are informing this clustering automatic machine to be able to give us this nice hypnogram and give us ideas about how the system is working, what is the state of the sleep. So one of the most important information for these clustering mechanisms or pipelines is about the EEG. We know that when people are aware, they have frequency band activation in beta frequency band and alpha frequency band. We know that when people get to the sleep, there could be a dominancy in theta frequency. We have discussed that even in waking, we have definitely lots of connections in the brain through the theta frequency wave band, but we can have a specific theta frequency band in REM sleep, and I will tell you about how and why these theta frequency bands are important in REM sleep. And then in non-REM sleep, and then in N2 and N3. For example, in this, let's say, system, this is the deepest sleep that we can get. So as you can imagine, this categorization system is relying on something like 3 phases for non-REM sleep. So they do not have N4. So it is basically N3 is the deepest one. And it is using slow wave spindles or slow wave activities, as you can see here. And they could have different frequencies, whether the frequencies would be, let's say, 12 to 15 hertz, or having delta waves that could be under 4 hertz. I'm not sure 4.54 would be a better marker. So under 4 would be delta, that would be happening in the phase that we call slow wave sleep. So I really like to use these two terms, slow wave sleep and REM sleep, and trying to differentiate these two major phases of a sleep that we take and how they are interacting with each other. If you want to clearly try to find different types of waves that we have in EEG during sleep, when we talk about slow wave sleep, we can have slow oscillations, spindles, sharp wave ripples, and this could be something like 0.8 hertz. These spindles are something like 15 hertz, and these ripples could be something like 100 to 300 hertz. And these slow oscillations are mainly cortical oscillations. Spindles are mainly thalamic oscillations, and slow wave ripples are mainly from hippocampus. And then for REM, we have PGO wave and theta waves. And I will probably talk about them later on. But just PGO comes from Ponto, which is about what we call pons, which is in the middle brain. So it's just the kind of the brain stem that you have. And geniculo goes back to what we call LGN, if you remember. Do you remember what was LGN? Could you just type in the chat space what was LGN and what was it related to? Good job. Yeah, we have discussed about the visual system and how they are related to lateral geniculate nucleus. So this system is driving from the pons to LGN, and from LGN obviously to orbital, to occipital, and this is basically the visual system. So they are driving your eyes from pons, which is a part of the brain stem, and that is the wave that we have, and that is the reason that we have rapid eye movement. So This is the reason of having rapid eye movement, PGO waves, ponto, geniculo, occipital waves. And then we have theta waves that are important for REM. I will discuss about them. So they might seem a little bit complex in terms of different waves that we have during sleep, but you can eventually learn about them and how these waves are functioning and how they interact with different cognitive functions and why they are important for processing information in the brain. One important thing that I can tell you in terms of the slow oscillations that I told you, the sharp wave ripples and the spindles, that they are highly interacting to each other in terms of, it seems that the slow oscillations waves in neocortex are interacting with hippocampus, and also the thalamus is basically generating the entire loop. So thalamus is driving the process by making the spindles, making the synchronized oscillatory activities in neocortex, and then they would drive hippocampus. So these three major brain elements are interacting with each other in the process of a slow wave sleep, and they are pretty much synced to each other. And we'll discuss about that, why it's critically important for the function that we're expecting from slow wave sleep. So we have this interesting level of interaction between these parts, and it's quite amazing that we do not have this interaction in what we call REM. So when we have REM, this interaction is not happening. So it is not about REM, it's just about short slow wave sleep phase, that we have this beautiful synchronized feedbacks and interaction between these three major components that are driving the function that we're expecting from slow wave sleep. Just to give you a better sense about the phase of sleep and kind of learning more about this process, as I told you, we are recording things like EMG. One of the important things that we have in EMG, of course, EMG, which is coming from electromusculogram, so recording muscles based on their electrical activities. Obviously, when we are wakeful, I mean, we have lots of electromyographic activations. During non-REM, there are still muscle activities, and even you can walk. So when we talk about sleepwalking, is about non-REM sleep. So we can have a sleepwalking during non-REM sleep. But it is supposed to be pretty much silent in the REM sleep. So in REM, we are expecting to have what we call atonia. So your cortex, your motor cortex, is getting activated, but it just gets disconnected from the motor pathway to your muscle. So you have lots of activation in your motor cortex, but it is out of circuit, so it is out of line. So it is just that the process is not going to go through the motor system and just making movement. So we have what we call atonia during REM sleep. But the atonia is for your corticospinal tract for your motor system. But this atonia is not happening in your eyes. So you still have almost the same eye movement that you have when you are awake in the REM sleep. Okay? So you have this, let's say, beautiful what is called oculo means eyes, electrooculogram. So you still have electrooculogram activities like the kind of during when you are awake, but this is not the case for your body muscles, so your muscular structures, and that is the reason that we do not have activations there. So it's interesting that there is something like a variation in terms of having atonia in your skeletal muscles, but not in your eyes. So that is the reason that you have lots of eye movements without having. And if you didn't have this atonia in your muscular system, then you probably would be running and doing screaming and doing lots of different things while you have been in REM sleep, and it was not going to work. So it is just that interesting kind of observation in terms of the recordings. And as you can see here, obviously, when we go from, in terms of the EEG would be slow waves during non-REM, and there would be higher frequencies in REM in terms of something like theta frequencies, but not as fast as what we have in wakeful phase. So you can see how these, let's say, 3 phases are gonna be differentiated from each other based on these measures that we have, and based on these measures we can have those hypnogram of clustering different phases of sleep into different major clusters. As I told you, when we have wakeful condition, we have continuous voluntary motor activities. In non-REM, we can have episodic involuntary movements, and in non-REM, we are supposed to just have inhibition in this system. So the system is supposed to not to work. So there would be something like a level of atonia or paralysis in the system when we are in the REM sleep. In terms of the thoughts would be still logical during non-REM, but they could be totally illogical in REM. And that is the reason that when you go out of sleep in REM, you can have totally illogical, kind of bizarre memories of different things that are happening during the REM sleep. But during non-REM sleep, things are still in place. So they are pretty much logical. And I will discuss about why. I mean, there is a variation between REM and non-REM in terms of the processes that are happening when we have these 2 phases of sleep. And then, in terms of the sensations, obviously, it seems that we have vivid, internally generated visual systems, visual processing during REM sleep. And that is the reason that if you come out of sleep in REM, you are doing dreaming in a really clear sense. And that is the reason that we have what we called nightmare here during dreaming, during REM sleep, because you have vivid kind of but bizarre sort of hallucination or kind of generation of different visual representations. But this is not the case for non-REM. So if you come out of non-REM, most of the time you have what we call night terror. So you do not have any specific dream. You just have something like negative feeling of that without clearly remembering what you have been seeing in your dream in your sleep. So that is the difference between night terror and nightmare, when we have nightmare during REM and night terror during non-REM sleep. So I mean, they are quite different in terms of the experiences and what people are reporting from that. And then, as I told you, if we are able to do single cell depth recording, as we can do it in cat, not obviously in human being, we can have PGO waves, which could be recorded in different parts of the system, but this one is being recorded in lateral geniculate nucleus. As you can see here, we have neuronal activations right before REM and during REM, but not in the other steps. So these, let's say, PGO waves are unique to the REM kind of sleep, and they could be recorded in different levels of this system, even in animals like cat. Okay, so this is how we label these phases to REM and non-REM, and the sleep could be generally divided in 2 parts. One is the slow wave sleep in the first part, and then the late sleep which is called the REM sleep, which is more dominated by REM sleep, and the first part which be mainly dominated by slow wave sleep. So that is the basically 2 major phases of sleep, and they all have their own functions. So if we miss this part, there are specific consequences. If we miss the REM part, there are specific consequences. So they have their own functions and their impact. And it's quite interesting that these two parts, just going into the slow wave sleep and just going out of slow wave sleep to the REM phase, these two phases, this one and this one, they could also have specific characteristics. So if we wake people in this phase or wake people in this phase, they could report you different experiences. And that is what we usually do in sleep labs. So you are recording, you see that people, okay, now your subject is just getting to, let's say, REM sleep. So you just wake them up and ask them, okay, what are you seeing? So it's quite an annoying experience in terms of just being in the sleep and just waking you up and just asking you what are the things that you are seeing or observing in your dreams. But this is the way that, I mean, the system is working, for at least for some of the experimental paradigms that people are using. And it's quite interesting that, I mean, these two phases, they have specific patterns of reporting. For example, when you are going to the slow wave sleep, if people are being kind of shocked to be out of sleep, they report sort of bizarre, hallucinatory, fragmented sort of sleep. But if they come out of sleep here, things would be more, let's say, logical, thought-like processes that would be happening in this phase. So there are some variations as well. So as I told you, I mean, these two phases, SWS or REM, these two phases are the major steps, but we still have some minor states, whether we are getting to the slow wave sleep or we are getting out of a slow wave sleep. There are some transitions in these phases as well, and it's important to have clear understanding about these transitions as well, and they are important in this process as well. Okay, that is the end of this part.